Hi, everyone. I'm Vladimir Jutit. We are watching all the news happening in the United States and around the world. Check out these monitors behind me here. These are feeds coming in to the CBS News Broadcast Center from all of our stations and affiliates around the country. Folks, if it's happening out there, we're going to bring it to you live right here in Studio 55. Let us begin. Records across the South shattered after a paralyzing winter storm blanketed several states with snow and ice, where the bitter cold moves next as millions try to dig out. And President Trump is dismantling diversity and inclusion offices across the federal government. Details on the changes and the layoffs that he's implementing. Plus, a settlement is reached between Prince Harry and Rupert Murdoch's British tabloids, ending the royals' case against the News Group newspapers just before the trial was set to begin. We've got the details. This is CBS News 24/7. A historic winter storm has shut down travel for millions from Texas to Florida. Parts of the South are seeing record snowfall, which is causing dangerous and icy road conditions. And 2/3 of the eastern U.S. will be in the grips of frigid cold temperatures through Thursday. I want to bring in CBS News reporter Katie Weiss, who's tracking the storm from New Orleans. Katie, it's Bourbon Street. It's covered in snow instead of the other stuff that it's usually covered in. Talking beads, alcohol, urine. Talk to me about how the city is impacted by what's happening right now weather-wise.
Vlad, you make a very good point. New Orleans is seeing the white stuff covering the ground this morning, a very unusual sight for folks in the Big Easy to wake up to. You could see, really thick layers of ice and snow that are covering the ground. I haven't seen anything like it on the Gulf Coast region, and we know that yesterday this city saw the most snowfall it's ever seen in the history of recorded weather here in the Big Easy. Pretty impressive. At this hour, we know that the city has taken in or brought in 14 snowplows from an Indiana company to come and plow the roads, but as you can tell, there's still a lot of progress to be made. In fact, I just spoke with a councilman a little bit ago this morning, and he says he's working to advocate to make sure that the neighborhoods here in the city, not just the touristy areas, are going to get that snowplow coverage as well. Vlad?
Yeah, on a serious note, I know that people are dealing with a lot. And the question, of course, is when you have a situation like this, Katie, in a part of the country that is not used to dealing with the storm, for example, schools, what are they doing in the wake of this snowfall?
Well, for the kids among all of this, I think they're having a good time, enjoying for the first time for many children here in New Orleans their very first snowfall. They have been off of school since Monday even, so schools were out proactively before the snow even fell. And we know it was the same thing with flights. Even some flights were canceled late Monday evening before there was ever even any snowfall on the ground, simply because of the big issue that this cold weather and snow brings to people. People needed more time to prepare and get themselves geared up for this big storm. At this hour, it's hard to find gas. It's hard to really find any business open, groceries, things of that nature. So folks are really sheltering in place and trying to do the best they can with the resources they have. Vlad?
Yeah, it's not just kids enjoying a rare bit of snow. I showed earlier on CBS Mornings, even adults who are finding the silver lining in the snowfall. My favorite is this guy sprinkling, instead of, here in New York City, we sprinkle rock salt on snow. He was sprinkling Creole seasoning on his doorstep, which I thought was hilarious. Katie Weiss, thank you very much.
That's fantastic.
Yeah, it's really, really great. I gotta love New Orleans. Thank you, Katie. Appreciate it. Let's bring in CBS News Philadelphia meteorologist Grant Gilmore with the first look at the national forecast. Hey, Grant.
Hey, Vlad, look, this snow is just, it's unprecedented, right? To get snow across the deep south. It was snowing over the Gulf of Mexico yesterday, which is just crazy. Houston, look at this, picking up 3 inches of snow in Houston, 10 inches in Los Angeles, New Orleans, Louisiana. And then Mobile, Alabama, picking up around 7.5 inches of snow. This snow all the way up into the Carolinas. Absolutely impressive. And the Southerners will do what Southerners do, and they're going to have a good time with this snow. But you got to be careful with it because this is a lot of snow. Even for areas up north, that's a lot of snow to get. 10 inches, nearly a foot of snow in just one day. That's a lot of snow. It may take a little while for it all to melt. Some of the peak snowfall across the South. Look at all these totals. Chalmette, Louisiana, 11.5 inches of snow. Vlad, and look, all of this because of the Arctic cold that's in place. We'll talk more about that here coming up in just a bit. Back to you.
All right, Grant, thank you very much. President Trump has ordered all federal DEI employees to be placed on paid leave no later than 5 p.m. Eastern tonight. I'm going to bring in CBS News Chief White House correspondent Nancy Cordes, who's tracking developments. Nancy, this sort of came as a surprise to those employees. I watched your report last night on the evening news. It sort of came out of nowhere, although the president had talked about it, not just on the campaign trail, but even during his inauguration speech. Describe how this is going to impact those employees.
Well, they are in limbo right now, Vlad. They are being placed on administrative leave immediately, as you said, paid leave. And they're being told, hey, we'll let you know about your future when we can, as soon as we can. And what the heads of these agencies are being instructed to do in the meantime is to provide a plan by next Friday at 5 p.m. for how they can pull off a reduction in workforce, essentially layoffs, for the people who work in these offices or to reassign them. So they need to figure out what they're going to be doing with these workers quickly. We don't actually know how many federal workers this applies to because this has to do with DEI operations, programs, offices throughout the entire federal government. And it's a little bit of an open question. How do you pinpoint, there are lots of employees whose roles involve some aspect of diversity, equity, inclusion, but maybe it's not their primary focus. So where do you draw the line? So there's still a lot of open questions about this, Vlad, including one point that is made in this memo where it claims that employees need to speak up if they know of a DEI office within the federal government that is being disguised using coded language, basically to cover up the fact that there's a program that is focused on diversity, equity, inclusion that perhaps will escape the attention otherwise of the folks at the top.
Yeah, that was that stood out to me as well, Nancy, when I saw the memorandum. Let me ask you about this other bit of news. The administration has ordered a pause on all external health communications, like weekly scientific reports and health advisories. Explain what that is, what's behind the move, and how that could affect the information that people across the government and in the United States receive.
Right. So this was first reported by the Washington Post last night, which said that all of the federal health agencies like the FDA, HHS, the CDC, were being told to stop putting out any external communications. So any information that they routinely put out online that they disseminate about, new medications or new health situations, they need to pause for right now. You probably remember back during the COVID era, we'd get those weekly updates from the CDC. How many people have died? How many people are hospitalized? That's the kind of thing that is being paused right now. And the bottom line is nobody really knows exactly why they're being told to pause. Is this just so that the new people who are coming in can kind of get their bearings and figure out what information the federal government disseminates and then decide? Or are there specific pieces of information that the health agencies in this country are putting out that they don't want out there, that they don't want the public to be seeing? That's what we're trying to learn right now.
And Nancy, before I let you go, any indication on when the first press briefing will happen with the new press secretary, Carolyn Leavitt? And the reason I ask is because all of these announcements that are happening, it often feels as if you recall just a day ago, the president was signing all these executive orders and he asked somebody, what is this one? And they said, oh, we're removing the United States from the World Health Organization. And he was like, whoa, okay. And I sort of wonder, as the wheels of government begin to turn, I know this is part of what he said he would do, but these are people that are carrying out these orders based on some of the campaign speeches and promises he made. I'm just curious as to how up to speed the president is on all of this.
Well, Caroline Leavitt was asked yesterday in a Fox News appearance when she would be doing her first public briefing, and she said TBD. She wasn't going to do one yesterday because the president was doing a public event, and as you saw, he took his own questions about a whole host of issues. And I think that as long as he's doing public events himself, where he is going to willingly be taking questions from reporters about his actions, she may decide to hold off because the principal is acting as his own press secretary at the moment.
Which we know he likes to do. Nancy Cordes, thank you very much, my friend. Appreciate it.
You got it.
All right, we just learned that all refugee travel to the United States is also on hold. The State Department has also stopped refugee processing to comply with the president's suspension of the U.S. refugee admissions program. Officials were instructed to stop the refugee referral process overseas and to pause a Biden administration program that allowed private American citizens to sponsor those refugees. We're told the move today from the State Department does not affect special immigrant visa holders who assisted U.S. military forces. Today, more of the January 6 rioters are expected to be released from prison after President Trump pardoned over 1,500 defendants. The move has been met with its fair share of criticism from lawmakers from both lawmakers and law enforcement. U.S. Capitol Police Chief Thomas Manger told CBS News about the message that these pardons are sending.
It sends the message that politics is more important than policing. And my officers go out there every day and enforce the law impartially.
It's such a slap in the face to those of us who literally experienced physical violence that day. And to know that these violent criminals, these convicted felons, are going to be released entirely scot-free with it means, there's no actual accountability.
I want to bring in CBS News political reporter Torian Small for the very latest. What are you hearing from lawmakers about these pardons, Torian?
Yeah, Vlad, Democrats are pretty upset by that blanket pardon by the president. A lot of Democrats saying this flies in the face of this law and order presidency that Trump looks to bring to the office. What I am, though, interested in is how Republicans are responding to this. So Senator Loomis, for example, said that though she's uncomfortable by this, this is a precedent set by she's putting the blame squarely on Joe Biden for setting this precedent of doing some unusual pardons. Senator Kennedy was also an interesting response to this. He said that he wouldn't certainly have made the decision that the president made. He said he would have preferred that President Trump went case by case to evaluate whether or not these people should be receiving pardons. But he ultimately agreed with Loomis, saying that this is a precedent set by Joe Biden. He said that he would like to see, and this was pretty interesting how he worded this. This was kind of like a warning to both administrations in the softest way possible. He said he wants to see the government stop being weaponized and politicized, and he would love to see a return to normalcy that we saw before, in his mind, Joe Biden.
There are reports, Torian, of Senator Joni Ernst introducing legislation to prohibit federal funding for Planned Parenthood. What are you hearing about that?
Yeah, that's according to a report from the Daily Caller. They scooped this, saying that Ernst is looking to introduce this sometime soon. This isn't the first time she's introduced legislation like this. The trigger here, according to their reporting, is that she was bothered by Planned Parenthood receiving COVID relief funds. So in this report, it's outlined how they brought in about $2.6 million through PPP loans during the time of 2020 to 2021. She's looking to not only rescind that, but forbid the government from giving them future funding. But like we saw what happened in 2024, she unsuccessfully had that bill make it to the Senate floor. That was blocked by Democrats there. And we also know that though the Senate has a majority of Republicans as well as the majority in the House, it's unclear if she'll be able to bypass the filibuster, if she'll be able to get enough Democrats to support the bill. How this measure could make it pass, though, is whether or not it will be a rider to this upcoming reconciliation bill that Republicans are looking to add. So if she attaches it to that, there could be a pathway to blocking funding for Planned Parenthood moving forward.
All right, we'll be watching. Torian Small, thank you very much. We got an update on the investigation into the deadly fire at a popular ski resort in Turkey, what we know about the people who have died. You're streaming CBS News 24/7. To Israel now, where 4 people were hurt in a stabbing attack in Tel Aviv overnight. The suspect, who recently reportedly had Moroccan citizenship and a U.S. green card, was shot dead at the scene. CBS News foreign correspondent Ramy Inocencio is following the very latest from Tel Aviv.
Yes, and now there is concern about a security failure here in Israel, just as the ceasefire with Hamas is getting going. That's because this U.S. green card holder reportedly arrived here in Israel just a few days ago, flying in via Poland, and was at first stopped, then questioned by Shin Bet, which is likened to Israel's version of the FBI. An investigation is still ongoing. To the bigger picture and to Gaza, and the ceasefire means we're getting a fresh understanding of the scope of the destruction after 15 months of IDF bombing, in some places stretching to the horizon. The UN estimates it could take more than 2 decades to just clear the rubble. We haven't heard reports of a single new death since the IDF stopped its bombing last Sunday, but the official death toll, that is still rising, now more than 47,100, according to the Masra Health Ministry. And that is because the recovery of human remains has now started, with thousands believed to be under the debris. But it also means most of Gaza's population, which has been displaced, is able to start going back to what is left of their homes. More aid is also getting in to help alleviate the hunger there. But there is more violence in the West Bank today. The IDF launched several airstrikes in Jenin, which is seen as a stronghold of Palestinian resistance. At least 10 Palestinians were reportedly killed and nearly 40 more injured. And that comes as President Trump withdrew sanctions on Israeli settlers in the West Bank. Looking ahead to this Saturday, Hamas says it will release 4 hostages. Israel, in exchange, would release up to 200 Palestinian detainees and prisoners, of course, if this ceasefire still holds. Back to you.
Okay, Ramy, thank you very much. A national day of mourning declared in Turkey today following a deadly fire at a ski resort. The 12-story hotel was packed with guests. At least 76 people have died and dozens more have been injured. 9 people have been detained as part of the investigation into what happened. BBC Turkish reporter Ezra Yalçınar joins us now from the town of Bolu, where this tragedy occurred. Thank you, Ezra, so much for being with us. You went to the funeral home for one of the victims. What more are you learning about those who lost their lives? What did the family members tell you?
Yes, it was a school holiday. It was a 2-week school holiday that started on Monday, and then the next morning this happens. So you can expect that there are many families with their kids and trying to enjoy the holiday at a ski resort, as a well-established ski resort. Matter of fact, it has been around for decades. It was a trustworthy institution, but nobody could have guessed that this could happen there. We went to one of the funerals today, one of the first ones taking place at a mosque, and we talked to the friends and the family and just general public who attended this funeral. Some of them were saying that no one can choose their death, so this was part of fate. This was part of what God has written for them. But some were asking questions. Some were asking questions regarding the fire precautions, fire regulations, the fire inspections that did not or did took place at the hotel. There's an ongoing public discussion regarding whose jurisdiction was to inspect this hotel. There are claims from the government, from the tourism and culture minister, that this hotel was properly inspected in 2021 and 2024, and it had the proper 2 fire stairs as it's supposed to. But on the other hand, the main opposition party's mayor, the mayor of Bolu, Tanju Özcan, is claiming that this hotel was not properly inspected, and there's definitely a ongoing public debate about who need to do what.
So, Ezra, can you confirm that there were not any working fire alarms in the hotel? And we're hearing from the owner of the hotel, who was among those that have been arrested. There are 12 people that we understand have been arrested in connection to this investigation. What do authorities believe happened?
At this point, there are 9 people arrested, and one of those people are the hotel's owner. The hotel's owner. This is the numbers from the Minister of Justice. And it has been reported that the survivors did not hear any fire alarms. They were woken up by people knocking on their doors and just woke up by the commotion taking place. So there were multiple reports of a fire alarm not existing, and also it has been reported that the fire started from the kitchen, from a regular cooking accident possibly, and there were no sprinklers, so the fire could fast take place and travel through the different floors and reach up to the top floor, to the ceiling, to the top floor of the hotel, which is a 12-story hotel. And it's located on a very steep hill. Therefore, the fire brigades, which were not present at the ski resort, the ski resort Kartalkaya is 1 hour from the city center, and the fire brigade came 1 hour later. So there's a lot of discussion about what should have happened once a fire took place in this hotel.
Excellent reporting. Ezra Yalchinap, thank you very, very much. What a tragedy. We appreciate it. Thank you. Okay, let's take you to Capitol Hill now, where you can see there House Speaker Mike Johnson holding a press conference after their closed-door meetings. Let's listen.
Weaponization of the events. The following, the prosecutions that happened after January 6th. It was a terrible time and a terrible chapter in America's history. The president's made his decision. I don't second guess those. And yes, it's kind of my ethos, my worldview. We believe in redemption. We believe in second chances. If you would argue that those people didn't pay a heavy penalty, having been incarcerated and all of that's up to you. But the president's made a decision. We move forward. There are better days ahead of us. That's what we're excited about. We're not looking backwards. We're looking forward. Just second row. Well, what the president is trying to do right now is a reset, and I don't second-guess his decisions on that. He's using his executive authority because desperate times call for desperate measures. Now, our role as Article 1 branch of the government is to look through legislatively which of these things will we codify, what do we need to address. Obviously, the wide-open border has created an indescribable human catastrophe for us that we will be dealing with for decades. The president is very serious about addressing that, and guess what? So are the American people. Look at the New York Times poll from just 2 or 3 days ago. 87% of Americans say that we should deport illegal aliens who are criminals and dangerous to American citizens. This is, again, common sense. So I think the people are behind the president and his agenda and his priorities, and he's going to make those decisions, and we're going to do our part, and we are going to work together very closely to address all of it. Yes, sir. Second row.
All right. House Speaker Mike Johnson taking some questions there from reporters. We're going to continue tracking developments on the Hill. For now, though, quick break. We'll be right back. Here's a look at some of the top stories we're following for you. Authorities in California released the images of 2 men they are searching for after they allegedly stole fire equipment from crews in San Bernardino County last week. It's believed the robbery took place in a hotel parking lot where a U.S. Forest Service firefighting strike team was staying. Authorities say the 2 suspects stole essential fire equipment. Lawmakers on Capitol Hill are expected to vote today on the Laken Riley Act. The Senate amended and approved the immigration bill earlier this week. It now falls to the House. The act would allow the Department of Homeland Security to detain undocumented people who are charged with certain nonviolent crimes. The law was named after Laken Riley, a 22-year-old nursing student who was murdered by an undocumented immigrant while on a jogging run in Georgia last year. And Netflix users, get ready to pay more for your subscriptions. The company announced that its premium and standard memberships will cost $2 more every month. That's $25 and $18 respectively. And if you can handle watching with ads, well, you still will have to pay more. The standard plan with ads will go up by $1 per month to $8. In a letter to investors, the company said it is asking people to pay, quote, a little more to further improve Netflix. Some parts of the U.S. are seeing a record amount of snowfall. The deadly winter weather has blanketed southern states from Louisiana to Texas. At least 4 weather-related deaths have been reported. It is a rare occurrence for places like Jacksonville, Florida, which is seeing snow, sleet, and accumulating ice. CBS News Pittsburgh reporter Barry Pintar has more on the impact of the storm, and he joins me now. So, Barry, Pennsylvania, of course, is no stranger to winter weather, but it was cold enough to close the schools there. How are people dealing with the temperatures?
Yeah, Vlad, it is colder than we are definitely used to. As a matter of fact, it's been about 10 years since we've had a cold snap like this. And all I have to do is show you around just to show you what we're dealing with. So for starters, I am live in front of Acrisure Stadium, home of the Pittsburgh Steelers. And as you can imagine, if we just go over this way a moment, so much of it depends on the wind chill. If you can see the flags behind me here, you know, when the wind isn't blowing, it's bearable. When the wind starts to blow, you can feel that biting on your skin. And to be sure, if I wasn't standing before you right now, I would have my skin completely covered because you have to. Now, this is the city of Pittsburgh, and just to give you a view, this is the river. Of course, Pittsburgh called the Three Rivers. We used to have the Three Rivers Stadium, but it is the home of the Three Rivers, and this is the Point State Park right there where the Three Rivers meet. And as you can see, sometimes one river, maybe 2 rivers might be frozen, but it is cold enough that all 3 of our rivers, regardless of where they come from, are frozen. If I could pan around this way, I'm going to step in front of the camera, of course, across the incline there. This is the statue of Mr. Rogers. Of course, Mr. Rogers, home of the Pittsburgh as well. And as someone joked, one of our anchors recently, at least he's wearing a sweater. Well, it takes much more than a sweater now. So where are we in terms of these temperatures? Well, first of all, this is the coldest it's been in 10 years. Wind chills will not get above 0 degrees today. When I woke up at my house today out near the airport, it was 8 degrees air temperature below 0. 8 below 0 air temperature. Factor in the wind, and you're definitely at 20 below, 30 below, and it gets pretty biting cold. Infrastructure, though, as you said, is one of the challenges with something like this, not only for the city of Pittsburgh and the surrounding areas, but, of course, homes, because it taxes our power grid, natural gas. A lot of people don't realize when you deal with temperatures like this, there's a serious concern about water pipes freezing, because if the water freezes in your home in the pipes, that ice expands, and the next thing you know, those water pipes are exploding, your house is flooded out and then frozen, and you have to find somewhere else to stay. And certainly, there are warming centers all across our region for people who have to deal with this. One other interesting infrastructure I'm going to show you, and I'm going to ask my photojournalist Steve if he can zoom into the road back there. I want you to notice it's kind of fascinating how half of the road is plowed or salted, if you will, or treated is a better word, and half isn't, right in front of Acrisure Stadium right there. Again, people who don't live in this climate don't realize that salt stops being effective after 15 degrees above 0. Keep in mind, today we were 8 degrees below 0. So when you're reeling in these temperatures, lots of challenges to deal with for sure.
All right, Barry, thank you very much for that update. Appreciate it. Let's bring in CBS News Philadelphia meteorologist Grant Gilmore with another look at the national forecast. Hey, Grant.
Hey, Vlad, it's incredible how far south that Arctic area is. If it's that cold in Pittsburgh, that means that areas farther south are even colder. Let me zoom out. Let me show you the continental United States here, and let's talk about the snow. A big story over the last 48 hours as we put on the map here and pull up some of these snowfall reports across the south. Houston picked up 2, if not close to 3 inches of snow. New Orleans saw around 10 inches of snow. Think about that. That's 2 inches shy of just a foot of snowfall in New Orleans. You head all across the Gulf states there, places like Mobile, Alabama, saw about 7.5, and those snowfall reports extended all the way into the Carolinas, where the snow is just now beginning to taper off as we watch that system move out over the Atlantic Ocean. Now, that Arctic air is still in place, but you see at least that winter weather clearing the coast. Still some places along the Outer Banks of North Carolina seeing some of that lingering snow this morning, which is crazy. The Outer Banks of North Carolina still seeing snow on this cold January morning. Look at some of these current temperatures across the eastern half of the United States. Minneapolis is 21, feels like 15 degrees. Chicago's 12, feels like 5 below. And all that Arctic air descending all the way to the south. New Orleans right now with snow on the ground, a lot of it. 27 degrees, actual temperature with those feels like temperatures at 18 degrees. That Arctic air will begin to retreat over the next couple of days, but it is a slow retreat. You see some of that moderation in temperatures up over the northern tier states today into tomorrow. That Arctic air still in place, though, beginning to warm back above freezing in New Orleans over the next couple of days. You'll see a little bit more moderation as we make our way into the weekend. So we'll continue to track that, but also keeping a close eye on that fire weather. We've got critical fire concerns across Southern California today with wind gusts over the next couple of days expected to be anywhere between 55 to 75 miles per hour. Vlad, back to you.
All right, Grant, thank you. An update for you now on those deadly wildfires in Southern California that have claimed the lives of at least 28 people. Evacuation orders for residents around Rupert Valley have been lifted after fire crews gained the upper hand on the Clay Fire, which has burned more than 40 acres. It is now 40% contained. Crews are also making progress with the big wildfires in and around Los Angeles. The Palisades Fire is 65% contained, and the Eaton Fire is 89% contained. And forecasters are saying Southern California could soon be getting some badly needed rain. Meanwhile, leaders of some of the world's largest economies are in Davos, Switzerland this week for the annual World Economic Forum. President Trump will address attendees tomorrow live via video feed, but he's already the talk of the town given some of the things he's done and said before and after taking office. CBS News national security contributor Samantha Vinograd is live in Davos for us this morning to talk about this. Sam, what is the significance of the World Economic Forum for people who might be wondering?
Well, just in terms of scale, Vlad, we have 3,000 attendees from over 130 countries, 50 heads of state and government, and really the world's leading public and private sector leaders, as well as leading academics, civil society, and nonprofit leaders. You really have the smartest minds in the world gathering in, frankly, a small ski town in Davos, Switzerland, to talk about the most pressing challenges facing the globe, as well as opportunities for the theme of this year's Davos Forum, intelligent cooperation. And it's really an opportunity for these brilliant minds to come together and try to come up with both risk analyses as well as solutions for how to address challenges and seize opportunities that can improve the global economy.
So what are some of the challenges at the top of the list for this year's summit, Sam?
Well, there's a few that are frankly on everybody's lips right now. One, Vlad, won't surprise you, and that is the unpredictability of President Trump. For example, the German chancellor earlier in the forum mentioned that predictability and reliability are, friends to the global economy. And every conversation I've had here has been dominated by questions related to what is President Trump really doing and what's he going to do next? So there's a deep concern about unpredictability. At the same time, there is a deep shared view that global fragmentation is upon us, and that could lead to a fracturing of a multilateral world order, as well as fracturing within countries themselves. The third topic that is really making the rounds in all the rooms here in Davos is artificial intelligence. The broad consensus is that artificial intelligence is a force for good, but that there are several challenges related to using it responsibly. So those three key themes are really dominating conversations. In addition, of course, the regular topics like geopolitics, state-armed conflict, sustainability, and more.
And what about this notion of tariffs, Sam? That's something that the president he campaigned on that. He's now already suggested and highlighted that he plans to impose some tariffs on Mexico and Canada. And oftentimes it feels as if people don't really understand how tariffs work. The goods that are coming into the United States, those tariffs are applied, as you know, at the ports of entry. And those people who are collecting those goods and then selling them to Americans are the ones that are going to raise the prices for those goods because they're now losing money. It's not the countries who are exporting those commodities.
That's exactly right. The consumers here in the United States will bear the increased costs if President Trump does follow through on these tariff threats. And it's interesting. President Trump did threaten a series of tariffs on the campaign trail. In his first 72 hours in office or so, he indicated that he'd be undertaking a review of unfair trade practices. And I believe yesterday indicated he was also looking at a 10% tariff on specific Chinese goods based upon China's posture on fentanyl. He also indicated he'd be making a decision on tariffs in early February. So folks here in Davos are expecting tariffs, but based upon the kind of wildly divergent statements the president has been making, it's a little bit of head spinning trying to understand where he's really going with this. There was an ironic moment, of course, when the premier of China spoke at Davos earlier this week and indicated that multilateralism is a requirement for a stable global economy. And he warned against trade wars and said trade wars are not our friends. So the Chinese are certainly bracing for potential tariffs. And folks here in Davos are expecting them to come. The scale and scope is something that everybody is trying to analyze, but the unpredictability of the president's statements are making that a bit difficult.
Yeah, indeed. Sam Vinograd for us from Davos, Switzerland. Sam, thank you very much. Appreciate it.
Thanks, Vlad.
Okay, some cities across the country are taking matters into their own hands and preparing for the potential immigration crackdowns from the Trump administration. But we learned today that the Justice Department is directing prosecutors to investigate local jurisdictions that try to obstruct that immigration enforcement. CBS News Chicago reporter Andrew Ramos has a look at how city officials there are bracing for those possible raids and deportations.
We don't know what's coming.
The city of Evanston taking matters into its own hands, holding a workshop tonight at City Hall, giving undocumented community members the tools to fight back amid a cloud of uncertainty.
We know that there's a possibility that our residents will be under threat, and we want to arm and empower them with every piece of information.
The preparation for the unknown is something that's keeping so-called sanctuary cities across the country on edge as the threat of mass deportations looms.
I, Donald John Trump, do solemnly swear.
Just minutes into being sworn in, the Trump administration shut down a border app, CBP One, which allowed asylum seekers to legally enter the U.S., canceling all scheduled asylum appointments, stopping thousands of migrants in their tracks. After a weeks-long journey to the border, this mom from Venezuela now has nowhere to go. Back in Chicago, while local nonprofits and pro-immigrant organizations keep a watchful eye on predominantly immigrant neighborhoods, Chicago Police Department leadership issued a statement reminding the public that it will not assist federal immigration authorities with enforcement action as part of the current municipal code. Adding in part, as always, we will continue to enforce the law if a crime occurs, regardless of the citizenship status of those involved.
So I'm a birthright baby.
Meantime, Illinois Attorney General Kwame Raoul says his office is ready to challenge President Trump's recently signed executive order aiming to end birthright citizenship.
The language in the 14th Amendment is clear and unambiguous. If you're born in this country, you're a citizen of this country.
All right, coming up, an abrupt end to the case between Prince Harry and Rupert Murdoch's UK tabloids and a rare apology from the newspaper group. Details next. You're streaming CBS News 24/7. Settlement has been reached between Prince Harry and the UK tabloids owned by Rupert Murdoch, and the agreement came with a rare apology after a years-long court battle. CBS News foreign correspondent Imtiaz Taib is live from London with the details. So, Imtiaz, for our American cousins who may be wondering what this was all about, describe what Prince Harry accused the tabloids of doing and what was that settlement.
Yeah, hey, Vlad, good to be with you. Well, this, of course, has been a very long-running settlement, and here we have this morning getting ready for what was going to be a 7 to 10-week court battle between Prince Harry and Prince Rupert's group of newspapers, but instead we got two explosive statements. The first one from the Murdoch-owned company, which offered Harry a, quote, full and unequivocal apology for hacking his cell phone and intruding into his personal life for articles that this newspaper group published between 1996 and 2011, acknowledging, quote, unlawful conduct by private investigators belonging to that paper group. Now, there was also an apology for past intrusions into Harry's mother, Princess Diana's private life as well. Now, this is the first time, as we've been saying, that Murdoch's newspaper group has admitted wrongdoing involving any of his papers in a legal ordeal that, again, has lasted for decades and has cost Murdoch's newspaper group over $1 billion in payout. Now, in that statement from Prince Harry, he called the settlement a monumental victory, saying that the papers had finally been held account for, quote, the blatant disregard for the law. Now, in terms of the settlement, we're hearing that the dollar figure is in its 8 figures. Vlad.
Wow. So what kind of precedent are they saying in the UK that this will set for perhaps tabloid media and the content that they publish moving forward?
Yeah, look, this is, again, as we've been saying, something that has been going on for many years. There was a major inquiry here in the UK called the Leveson Inquiry, which revealed much of this. But this was a case that Prince Harry refused to let go. So many people, around 1,300 people, settled with the newspaper group because the way the law works here in the UK, the financial liabilities for taking this to trial was simply too high. If they lost, they would have had to have paid for Rupert Murdoch and his newspaper group's legal fees. So that's why so many people settled, including huge celebrities like Hugh Grant and Elton John. But this was something that, up until now, Prince Harry refused to do, except he got his way, which was this, an admission by the newspaper group that it had committed these crimes, well-established ones. Now, in terms of actually how things are going to change, well, the reality is a lot of it already has changed. This whole scandal has long been described as one of the, quote, most squalid periods of the British newspaper press. Now, that's not to say the tabloids here aren't aggressive. We've seen that, of course, over the years, but they are not committing crimes in the way that they used to.
All right, Imtiaz, and I can see that even though we are hours and miles apart, you got the closed memo? Looking good, my brother. Good to see you. Thank you. All right, snow totals are piling up across the south after a massive winter storm swept across several states. Where the system moves next, you're streaming CBS News 24/7. A grand jury indicted 4 Chilean nationals for allegedly breaking into the home of Cincinnati Bengals quarterback Joe Burrow. All 4 men face charges including engaging in a pattern of corrupt activity, participating in a criminal gang, and possessing criminal tools. It's still unclear whether there's any link to a series of thefts targeting professional athletes in the NFL, NHL, and NBA. CBS News has confirmed the FBI was looking into the possibility that South American gangs were involved in the break-ins. Ichiro Suzuki is the first Japanese player to be voted into the Baseball Hall of Fame. Suzuki received 393 of 394 votes from the Baseball Writers Association. I know, who is the one guy who's like, you know what? I'm going to be the contrarian and not vote for arguably one of the greatest baseball players in the history of the game. It was just one vote shy of being a unanimous vote in on the first try. Former pitchers CC Sabathia and Billy Wagner are also headed to Cooperstown. Sabathia is making it in as a first ballot Hall of Famer. Wagner on his very last try. There's really incredible video of him crying when he receives the news that he's going to Cooperstown. Lifelong dream. Congratulations to all 3. All right, comedian and former Daily Show host Trevor Noah is hosting the Grammys for the 5th straight year. It will take place in LA and honor the first responders who've been battling those deadly wildfires. You can watch the 67th Grammy Awards on Sunday, February 2nd at 8 Eastern, 5 Pacific on CBS and Paramount+. Let's bring in CBS News Philadelphia meteorologist Grant Gilmore with the last look at the national forecast. Grant.
Thank you, Vlad. That historic snowstorm now beginning to move off the southeastern coast this morning. Still some snow over the Outer Banks of North Carolina, but that Arctic air remains in place across the eastern 2/3 of the United States. A little Clipper system brings some snow to the Great Lakes states. Meanwhile, we are keeping an eye on those fire conditions, critical fire weather across Southern California today. Wind gusts between 55 to 75 miles per hour. We're likely going to see those gusts increase even more as we go into the day tomorrow. See those wind gusts up towards Santa Clarita between 60 to 70 miles per hour through tomorrow morning, and then still pretty gusty through tomorrow afternoon before beginning to die down and improve those conditions as we go into Friday and the weekend. Vlad, back to you.
All right, Grant, thank you very much. That does it for me, folks. But stay right where you are after the break. Elizabeth Cook is live from San Francisco with all the breaking news coast to coast. This is CBS News 24/7.